Alan Westfeldt is a professional loser who lives in a world where everyone's getting overpowered abilities, and his biggest achievement is being his family's disappointment. When he pathetically died as a nobody in some level 1 dungeon, an angel blessed him with a new life and sent him back to the past, granting him Song Jin Woo levels of power fantasy. With his new powers, he wanted to live a quiet life, but everything changed when he was caught in a demon war that forced him to reveal his godlike powers, which can obliterate the world itself. And it all started when Alan woke up one morning and dreamed of his last life being a continental bum. As it turned out, it's not a dream, and he's actually given a second chance to ruin it. But his brother, Brett, told him to stop his worthless delusions and see their father. Alan stood up and followed his brother to the hallway. On the way to the seat of the mansion, Brett told Alan that he was an ungrateful bastard and that he was also suffering because Alan was a good-for-nothing and useless son. But Alan didn't pay attention and headed to the room where his father, Duke Craig, was waiting. He knelt before his father, but Craig dropped some bars and obliterated him. He roasted Alan and told him that he's been in the dukedom of Westfeldt for 15 years, but he's still an S-rank bum. In this world, gods grant individuals various abilities, and they all start at level 1. Once they level up, they become stronger and more capable. However, ever since Duke Craig raised Alan, he's never seen him become stronger or apply for a job in Indeed. Thus, he wants to get rid of him as soon as possible. Alan was supposed to be the heir to the seat of the Westfeldts, but since he's nothing but a pathetic clown and didn't even get the gift of the gods, Craig had decided to disown him and put his younger brother, Brett, as the head of the family. But Alan didn't seem to mind being disowned, because it's his plan all along. He was finally free to be a professional bum for life, so he decided to travel the world. Since he had been given a new life, he wanted to be free from the obligations of a hero and make friends with people who used to fear him in his past life. What he wanted was to hide his power, so people could see him as a normal person. But not long before reaching the border, Alan sensed something was amiss. Wolves from Temu started attacking a lone knight. The female knight fought them dogs, but the bastards kept being reanimated by underpaid animators. The dogs attacked again, but the female knight couldn't keep up anymore. Alan noticed who the wolves attacked and realized it was yet another generic anime princess, Lisa Adestella, and her bodyguard, Beatrice. Alan had a past with Lisa in his old life. She was his fiancée. Lisa loved him dearly, but it's a lot different now. Alan wanted to avoid helping anyone, so he didn't reveal his powers, but there were still people in need. His grand plan of hiding his powers lasted for like 2 minutes. He immediately dashed towards the site and killed one of the wolves just to show off. He followed up with a horizontal slash, destroying 2 more, and then leaped into the air, cast a weakness detection spell, and blasted the poor bastards to Kingdom Come. Despite surviving the fight, Beatrice was gravely wounded and bleeding out. Lisa told her to be strong, but Beatrice thanked Alan for saving them and bid them farewell. But just to kill the emotional moment, Alan used his powerful healing ability to restore both Beatrice's body parts and armor. The girls were flabbergasted by what they saw. This bum was literally cheated, but when they asked him how he did that sorcery, Alan just told them it was one of his skills. Beatrice believed that Alan's powers were already too powerful for them, and Lisa agreed. But before they could ask more about his powers, Alan asked Lisa where they were going. Apparently, Lisa received a revelation a few days ago and acted on it. Lisa revealed that she could see the future, except when they were about to be jumped by wolves. She told Alan that they were heading toward Clume Village to follow the prophetic vision. They also expressed their gratitude towards Alan for saving them, but she couldn't help but wonder why Alan was so far away from home. Alan didn't answer them and used his creative mode power to repair the broken wagon. On the way to the village, he revealed to the girls that he was no longer Duke Craig's son. Lisa felt sorry for him and assured him he was welcome to join their party. Alan asked her if she's okay with letting him join, instead of being useful to the royal family because of his powers. But Lisa told him it's okay because he was just like the guy from Solo Leveling, and also because he's their friend. By dusk, the party arrived at the village. Once they entered the place, however, they realized that it was abandoned. Lisa thought that the village was attacked by monsters, but Alan told her it had been real quiet since they arrived. When they reached the village center, a couple of villagers caught their attention. They moved toward the scene and saw one of the villagers throw a short-haired girl out of their house. Lisa recognized the woman as the legendary hero, Akira. The hero didn't remember Lisa, but the princess told her what she did in the past. Apparently, Akira was the light that Lisa saw in her vision and the reason why they were in the village. Coincidentally, Akira was also the bearer of the gift, Braver, a powerful ability given by the gods to someone worthy. Akira was their hero and her appearance was not a mistake. Akira revealed the reason why she's also in the village. Apparently, she was hunting a legendary beast, the dragon from Monster Hunter. While exploring the surrounding vicinity, she came across a young girl. According to the girl, she was almost a sacrifice to the red dragon, who chose his nest on the nearby mountain. When Akira learned of this, she immediately checked with the village chief, but she was thrown out for asking about the dragon. Hearing this, Lisa believed that the dragon threatened the villagers to send their kids. But Alan thought it was the other way around. The villagers sent their kids to the Diddy Dragon Party to receive its protection. This also explained why there were no monsters in the area when they visited. Akira seconded this, but told them she'd defeat the dragon and save the kid later. Alan asked her if she would still save the kid at the cost of angering the villagers. Akira smiled and told him that she'd do it over and over again. Inspired by the hero's resolve, Lisa told the group she'd go with Akira. Beatrice also joined the party, which led to Alan joining as well. At the foot of the mountain, Akira briefed them on the plan. She'd take the dragon head-on, while Alan and the rest give it back shots, basically flank it. Alan wanted to join Akira to fight the dragon head-on, but she told him to leave it to her because she thought Alan would just aura farm the entire fight before one-shotting the creature. Furthermore, Akira thought Alan was extraordinary, but he pretended to be weak because that's what Isekai protagonists do. Alan obliged and joined Lisa's group. Lisa thought Akira might be able to handle the dragon on her own, but they still needed to support her. After scaling the mountain for a few minutes, the group reached the midpoint. Alan thought there was something more to the dragon's appearance rather than a coincidence. He believes his former family, the Westfeldt, were behind this. Beatrice concluded that the Westfeldts were borrowing the red dragon's power to protect the borderlands, their domain. But before they could continue their discussion, a ray of flames burst forth from the summit. Akira spotted the dragon first, and the creature confronted her by sending a fire ray. Akira dodged and counterattacked with a lightning strike. However, the dragon was impervious to elemental attacks and came out unscathed. The dragon mocked the hero for her dealing with absolute nothing-burger attacks, but Akira was confident she could take it down. But the dragon told her the sacrificed girl was there, which tricked the hero into lowering her guard. The dragon revealed that he didn't really give a flying crap about the village sacrifices. He's just bored because he's been living for so long, he's got nothing to do. This offended Akira so greatly that she jumped high into the air and struck the dragon with her ultimate skill. But once again, the dragon sustained no injury because of his plot armor. The dragon slapped the hero and attacked with some really wacky attack animation. But before the dragon could end the hero, the real hero arrived and cut the beast's wings. Alan told the hero to get Gud, while the rest of the group came to her aid. Akira was benched, so Alan took on the dragon. Infuriated by getting no diffed by Alan, the dragon recklessly charged toward him. Alan responded by unleashing one of his powerful abilities and wounding the dragon. It didn't make sense to the beast why he was struggling, so he asked how and why Alan was doing all that Isekai nonsense. Alan told him he's cooked medium rare and had no chance of winning against him. The dragon called Cap and did that while running Parker toward the group. Alan hesitated for a bit, but Lisa told him it's okay. And so, Alan dashed toward the dragon and used his most powerful skill, World's End, destroying the god-level beast and clearing the dark skies that it brought. The attack destroyed his sword, but Akira and the sacrificed girl were safe. A few days after the dragon encounter, Alan woke up with the Isekai Huz by his side. Beatrice sparred with Akira and everyone looked healthy, but they needed to move somewhere else. Beatrice asked Akira to join them instead, but the hero declined and stated that she needed to go somewhere safe to take care of the now orphan kid she saved. She also apologized to Alan for being useless mid-fight, but Alan told her it was fine because she's not him. Back in the Westfeldt Manor, a mysterious man reported to Duke Craig that the red dragon they brought was defeated. They wanted the dragon to lure Akira and kill her, but now their plans were dead in the water. Some reports indicated that Lisa was with Akira, that's why they failed. Hearing this angered Brett because the Temu wolves were his idea and they were easily defeated because they went easy on them. Craig calmed him down and told him they couldn't waste any more resources on their assets because they're gonna spread thin. He also believed that it didn't matter if Akira or Lisa escaped, so long as they were still in their domain. Craig moved on to their next plan, which was to abduct and kill an elf. The mysterious man told him not to worry because the elf's head would be theirs. He left the manor while Craig was scheming something sinister to buy another Fortnite battle pass. On the way to the next village, Lisa told Alan that they would have to visit a blacksmith friend of hers. She also told him that it was an apology for his broken sword during the last fight. She didn't want to drag Alan to the fight, but then she did. But now he's got a reward. Alan accepted Lisa's offer upon hearing it. By nighttime, they camped in the middle of the woods. Tired from the journey, Lisa slept on his shoulders, while Alan reminisced about the time when he first met Lisa. She was engaged to Alan for political reasons and one of the peaceful things that Alan wanted in the past. The next day, the group went to the outskirts of the village to visit their friend, Noel. The girls found it unusual that the place was quiet when it was really loud when their friend was working. Alan found the door to be unlocked and they entered the house. Lisa immediately found Noel's body and it freaked her out, thinking that she needed healing. But Beatrice realized Noel had just fallen unconscious, so Alan restored her constitution. After a few seconds, Noel woke up and asked why they were there. Lisa explained everything that happened so far, but Noel declined, stating that someone asked for her feet pics. She also noticed that Alan already had a sword. He didn't need another one. Alan revealed that it's already a broken sword, which piqued Noel's curiosity. Her gift activated and realized that Alan's sword was used beyond its absolute limit. She immediately changed her mind and decided to forge Alan another sword. However, before could do anything, she asked Alan if he wanted a sword that could surpass a divine sword, something like what Akira had. Noel explained that she could make a sword that's basically the equivalent of a cheat engine. But Lisa knew why Noel wanted to make a sword that could surpass the divine sword. Noel shrugged off Lisa's concerns, while Alan accepted the offer to forge that sword. However, Noel needed to concentrate, so she took everyone outside. This was a big move for Noel, and she reminisced a small bit of her past when she had a master. This worried Lisa because she knew Noel all too well, but Beatrice assured her that their friend knew what she was about to do. Alan recommended looking for some love hotel, but someone was shadowing their movement. Later that day, Alan told the girls that he's gonna wander for a bit. He immediately went to the Adventurers Guild and sold the dragon scales he collected. He needed a lot of money to fund his adventures and thought it was a good place to start. The scales shocked the guild lass and rushed to ask their manager, leaving Alan behind. He wanted to talk to the girl, but he was immediately approached by an unknown man accompanied by a young girl. The man asked Alan where he got the scales, but before Alan could say anything, the man introduced himself as Horace and the young Amazoness, Mylene. Horace told Alan that they're wanderers and want to hear people's adventures in their travels because he's that nosy. He asked whether Alan defeated the dragon on his own or with companions. Alan told him that was with the hero, Akira, making the hunt easier. The guild lass interrupted their chat, but Horace and Mylene disappeared without him noticing, adding 2,000 aura to their account. Horace concluded that Alan wasn't a priority target because he looked like a bum and didn't have any gifts whatsoever. But the young Amazoness thought he was an odd character. The next day, the group visited Noel and saw that she had collapsed on the floor once again. Lisa healed her back to normal and Noel pointed at the finished sword. Alan praised Noel and thanked her for his brand new sword. Noel insisted on Alan testing the new sword, so the two went to the forest to try it out so he could insert his sword in her sheath. On the way to the site, Alan asked Noel why she was a blacksmith. After all, most elves were either mages or archers, and dwarves were blacksmiths and tanks. That's common RPG logic. Noel stayed quiet for a bit before telling him about her past. She revealed that she was raised by a dwarf as tall as Prime LeBron. Noel added that Vanessa was both awkward and shy and didn't teach her anything related to blacksmithing. But still, she was her master. When she realized she revealed too much, Noel ran off. Alan was gonna follow her, but he was surprised that Horace and Mylene showed up once again. Noel saw who he was talking to, and she was worried, but she shrugged it off, thinking it was someone else. When they reached the site, Alan tested the new sword and he was happy that it was working well. Noel analyzed the sword experience to see its acquired fighting data and was also happy that Alan was doing well with the sword and she was seeing some progress from the sword she forged. But she wanted to see how well the sword would perform against stronger enemies, so she asked Alan to go deeper into the forest. After a few minutes of walking around the area, it appeared to be somewhat abandoned and misty, but Alan sensed something. He immediately struck at a distance, sending a wave of energy to clear the mist. But the reveal shocked Noel. It's like she had seen something she shouldn't. It's the furry final boss, the beast responsible for the death of her master Vanessa. Several years ago, Noel was living with Vanessa, whose sole passion was just forging swords. Noel felt left out for a few days because Vanessa never stopped forging swords, day and night. Struck with fear and anger, Noel ordered Alan to kill the giant furry with the sword she forged. She wanted Alan to avenge her master by killing Mr. Beast here, but Alan says that there was no reason for them to kill it at all. He just refused to do it for revenge, no matter what happened to Noel in the past. So, Noel had no choice but to grab the sword and rush toward the beast. Alan stopped her mid-charge and told her that it was the legendary wolf, Fenrir. He said that Noel couldn't possibly handle all that, because Fenrir's barriers were immune to any of her physical attacks, especially to her fighter level and her weapons tier. Noel insisted that her swords were better than a divine blade, but Alan retorted and said that she already knew her swords had yet to reach that level. He warned her that he wouldn't stop her even if she wanted to get her revenge, forcing Noel to rethink her decisions. Later that day, Alan reported the encounter to Lisa and Beatrice. He mentioned that it was probably brought by another entity because Fenrir's appearance didn't work like that. In any case, they need to be cautious. Alan confronted Lisa about the true intentions of their journey, so Lisa revealed the reason. A few months ago, General Cyril, the kingdom's greatest general, was assassinated. Apparently, the assassin took the head and left the body, which left everybody else confused. But both Beatrice and Lisa believed that the demons did it. Hearing this, Alan thought it was a bit of a stretch to picture the demons and humans working together, but it's very likely that the kingdom is working with the demons. They don't know if that's true, but Alan tells them about Horus, the mysterious man who he met twice. Later that night, Noel started working again on a brand new sword, motivated by Alan's remarks and her determination to surpass a divine blade. But Noel collapsed due to exhaustion and dreamed about the past. Several years ago, Fenrir attacked their house and she was half buried under the rubble. Vanessa, with the sword she forged, fought against the giant wolf, but Horus explained that they couldn't allow the existence of swords that were much better than the divine blades. Vanessa fought fiercely against the wolf, but Fenrir's barrier was stronger and he devoured the blacksmith completely. Noel saw all of it and the wolf charged toward her to finish her off. However, the hero Akira stopped the raging beast, injuring it. Horus teleported himself and the wolf away from them. Noel couldn't erase this memory from her mind and blamed herself because she couldn't do anything, and the sword that Vanessa made should have saved her. A few hours later, she woke up and continuously forged the sword. Once she was done, she headed back to the forest to finish Fenrir off. But the wolf senses her presence and the sword, pushing Noel away. Horus appeared once again to mock Noel, but Noel was done with his insults and started attacking Fenrir. However, she can't close the gap and Fenrir defeated her easily. Horus walked towards her and offered her a job as a swordsmith in their cabal because of her natural talent. But Noel refused to join him, so Horus ordered Fenrir to kill Noel. But unsurprisingly, Alan appeared just in the nick of time to save her. Horus congratulated Alan for appearing just in time to save Noel, but he told him it's a trap because the Amazoness was already in Noel's house, ready to kill both Lisa and Beatrice. However, Alan had already prepared for this, because back in the house, the Amazoness didn't find Lisa's body, and Beatrice confronted her. She immediately attacked the assassin, but Lisa stopped her from going all out. The assassin took this chance to do a sneaky attack and knocked her down while going after Lisa. However, Lisa stopped the assassin, which Beatrice used to knock her down. Horus couldn't believe himself, because he was underestimating Alan the whole time. However, Alan told him that the scheme wouldn't work on him or his friends because he already experienced a lot of that his whole life in his past life. When Alan confirmed that the Amazoness was down, he told Horus that his plan failed, but the man simply ignored it and called it a lie. He immediately set Fenrir on Alan, but Alan one-shotted the beast easily, forcing Horus to flee. After the fight, Alan brought Noel home. The next day, the group discussed what to do with the assassin. Beatrice wanted her to be sent to the capital for attempting on Lisa's life, but Lisa argued that it didn't seem like she did it on purpose. This situation reminded Noel about the time Vanessa saved her and brought her home. She freed the assassin and told the group that she would be taking responsibility for her. Mylene the assassin cried tears of joy, especially since she had no home to go to anymore. Later that night, Alan sent a devastating attack on Horus, who contemplated his loss. The demon appeared before Horus and killed him, just a few seconds before Alan could arrive to make him talk. The demon reported Horus's defeat to the Westfeldt, which disappointed the two. But the demon promised they'd kill both Lisa and Noel soon and wouldn't suffer the same fate as Horus and Fenrir. After a few days, Alan and the group visited a remote village somewhere in the borderlands. They caught the villagers preparing for the returning Spirit Festival, basically Halloween. This village was one of the closest areas where a silver-armored knight's ghost was apparently seen roaming every year. A few years ago, Lisa's adoptive father, Alfred, was traveling with her on the way to a mission when their carriage was attacked by monsters. Alfred tried to save Lisa but was severely wounded by the monsters and had fallen into a river current. Lisa's uncle fell to an uncertain fate in the past. That's why they want to know what's up with the village. Alan thought it would be a great idea to check the cemetery, but a man startled Beatrice. The man led them to the house of the village elder. The elder said that the village was quiet and there were no rumors such as any silver-armored knight's spirit roaming about. He also offered Lisa and the group a place to stay for a while because their festival was coming the next day and they must be tired. Alan took on the offer and stayed the night. Later that night, Lisa dreamt of his uncle, who she considered to be his second father, and taught her many things. But she was immediately awoken by something. A silver-armored knight was outside the window, which fit her uncle's description. She immediately rushed outside to speak with her uncle, but a hand grabbed her, which surfaced as a mindless zombie. She screamed but was woken up by Alan. It was apparently a nightmare. The next day, everyone was dressed in creepy clothes and started their ritual. Lisa bid her friends goodbye for a while to rest, but a strange mist caught her attention. It was the mysterious knight who looked like her uncle Alfred. The knight disappeared in a flash, forcing Lisa to chase after him. It led her to her uncle, who looked displeased when he saw her far from home and without escorts. Lisa finally had the chance to talk to Alfred and ask him where he'd been because she couldn't find him at all. Alfred confessed that he had been resenting the royal family, stating that the king was trying to kill Lisa. He also said that the king was specifically targeting people who possessed great gifts, like Noel's and Lisa's. Alfred told Lisa that every single one of the gifted was considered the puppets of the gods by the king, and their existence would bring destruction upon the kingdom. Alfred asked Lisa to come with him and save the kingdom together, but Lisa refused to help him. When he heard this from her, Alfred finally showed his true colors. He floated and started attacking Lisa. But Alan blocked the attack and saved Lisa. Alfred called him a failure, but Alan knew that he wasn't the real Alfred. He cast an anti-magic spell and broke the curse that forbade Alfred's death. When Alfred broke free of the curse, he was already dead. He confessed to Lisa that he was being controlled by the demons, so none of his attacks or provocations were real. But he, in fact, resented the king and planned to usurp the throne. But Lisa would be sad if he did all that. He also told Alan to take care of his niece for him. As his last request, Alfred asked Alan to spar with him one last time. The two sparred one last time, but before Alfred died, he mentioned how Lisa was the one who brought him peace. That night, the village elder approached Alan and asked him when did he notice it. Apparently, Alan did notice it from the start because the village looked weird, but didn't interfere because he's trying to find peace and the village of the dead was one of his definitions of peace. However, the village elder called him a fool for doing so and summoned his dead army. But Alan just used his anti-magic spell to break the curse before slicing everyone in half. The elder dropped a stone, which would be one of their leads. That same night, the demon reported the failure in the village to the Duke and Brett was infuriated. However, Duke Craig didn't mind it because they already had the Archbishop in their control. The next day, the group was traveling to another village. And on the way, Alan realized that his brother, Brett, was the one who controlled the village elder, which could also mean that he probably did it to Alfred and General Cyril, who was previously dead, but somehow had returned. 10 years ago, Brett and Alan's mother, Duchess Mariel, died to fulfill her destiny. Craig couldn't stop crying that day. Alan was suffering in silence, but Brett was scared of his father's face. Craig became a cold-hearted and emotionless father who holds nothing but disdain for his sons. Brett was affected by this, but Alan always supported him. Brett was different. He tried to become the better son and did everything not to disappoint his father, while Alan didn't do anything at all. This was something he held badly in his heart, which was something he always had dream about. And then one day, his father forced him to take the path of revenge and burn the world that took the Duchess away from him. But Brett had a different goal in mind. On the way to the castle, he reminisced about his path with Alan and how they suffered at the loss of his mother. Alan was his only support, especially since his father didn't even look him in the eye anymore. But after just a few months of training, he managed to get his father's attention and was praised for being stronger than his older brother Alan. But Alan was unfazed by his father's insults, and Brett was angry because his brother didn't even fight. But what's worse was that his brother sounded very patronizing when he said that he would support him in all of his endeavors, except when he chose the wrong path. The hooded figures warned him that if he failed to do his part, there would be hell to pay. When Brett arrived at the capital city, a hooded figure appeared before him to report that their preparations were completed. However, there was still the threat of Captain Edward stopping their plans, but he assured the hooded figure that it would be no trouble for them. Back in the kingdom's capital, people were gathered to hear what the returning general had to say. The captain of the Premier Knights, Edward, was greeted by the Archbishop, who asked him to be his escort. The vice captain, Clark, was uneasy about this because the captain was alone. Edward assured him nothing bad would happen. And then something bad happened because it was actually a trap. Duke Craig attacked Edward and commended him for blocking his attack. Apparently, they were friends a long time ago. Edward asked the Duke what the hell was wrong with him, but Craig attacked him and informed him that the Archbishop was already in their control. The hero Akira was wandering about in the capital together with the kid she saved when several hooded figures ambushed them. The figures threatened to kill her, revealing that everybody in the village was rigged to explode by magic sigils. The girl wanted to save Akira, so she pulled away from the hero. Then, the figures blasted them with their magic. Meanwhile, Vice Captain Clark and the Premier Knights were also ambushed by another hooded figure. The hooded figure revealed the truth of the world to them and offered to serve them instead of fighting them. Back in the square, General Cyril and the Archbishop made an announcement. Both of them claimed that the gifts they received from the gods were not, in fact, gifts but curses. They said that a lot of people might have been disappointed in the powers they've received because it also determined the course of their lives. The two claimed that they could change the course of everybody's life if they gave up on their gifts instead. Both the Archbishop and General Cyril offered them a solution. Brett showed up and explained their solution. He showed the sorcerous life forms that would serve the people because he ordered them to. People were worried about giving up their gifts because then they'd be useless without them. But Brett offered a solution. His goal was to use his marionette ability to unleash the latent abilities hidden within people. The Archbishop approved of this solution and endorsed it well, but people were hesitant. So, Brett finally introduced their trump card, the demons. He explained that the demons showed them the way, and from them, they learned the truth. The demons would serve humanity even when Brett and the rest were already dead. The people feared this revelation, but because it was endorsed by Brett, the trusted heir of the Duchy of Westfeldt, the revered General Cyril, and the pious Archbishop, then it must be true. Back in the warehouse, Craig and Edward exchanged blows. Edward used to be better than Craig, but he's getting no gift for some reason. Edward immediately realized that he was no longer fighting the Craig he knew. His friend leveled up, and so his abilities and overall strength were significantly better than his. Meanwhile, Vice Captain Clark and the Premier Knights raised their weapons against the hooded figure. Unfortunately, the figure made short work of his knights and gravely injured him. However, the backup arrived. Beatrice offered help to Clark and the remaining knight. When Edward was on the verge of defeat, Akira appeared before them and immediately challenged Craig. Back at the square, Alan broke his brother's speech and finally appeared before him. Things were heated as the combined attack of Akira, Alan, and Beatrice caught Craig, Brett, and the demons off guard. They were expecting it to be smooth, but things suddenly became complicated. However, none of them were fazed by what was happening. Alan broadcasted what the demons' intentions were in front of the crowd, which immediately ruined people's impression of Brett, the general, and the archbishop. Because of this, Brett was angry and accidentally revealed that he was part of that scheme. People were shocked, especially when Lisa appeared and revealed the truth. With his plans foiled, Brett used his ability and controlled the soldiers. But before he could do anything, Alan broke the curse, which caused the soldiers, the general, and the archbishop to drop unconscious. Brett lost his cool and used his abilities against his brother, but Alan just pulled the strings like it's bungee gum and made his brat of a brother taste a knuckle sandwich. After the fight, Alan instructed Lies to flee with the people to a safe location, because he was going to beat his dad. Meanwhile, Beatrice fought against the demon with Mylene's help, balancing the odds against them. The demon tried to flee, but Mylene threw a dagger, which allowed Beatrice to finish it off. The demon finally attacked the city and threw everything into chaos. Beatrice saw what was happening, so she ordered the knights to help out. Noel also arrived to give everyone enchanted weapons. Back in the warehouse, Akira fought Craig fiercely, but she was no match for him. Craig's abilities were one level above them, which made him stronger. However, what led to his overall strength was the unnatural aura surrounding him. Edward told Akira that Craig was using the Undertaker gift, the ability to see the future. He tried to stop Craig because he knew that Mariel, Craig's late wife, wouldn't allow to see her husband fall so low. Craig exclaimed that Mariel's death was inevitable, and he kept on seeing the visions of her death. Apparently, he tried everything to prevent it from happening. But her fate was already sealed. This was the reason why he was taking revenge on the kingdom and the gods who abandoned his wife in her hour of need. Mariel's fate was to die after giving birth to a hero, which was supposed to be Alan. However, Alan wasn't graced by the gods, so he had no gifts and Mariel died for nothing. Akira just told him to stop being a wimp, so Craig did, and he exchanged his life for more power. Akira tried to stop him, but it was already too late. Craig was beyond anything they were capable of, and even when Edward tried to stop him, it was useless. Edward finally experienced what Craig was feeling, and so, with the last of his strength, he apologized for not being there during his suffering. But it was too late because Craig accidentally stabbed him. Except not really, because he was in control all along. He was so consumed by grief and darkness that he's got nothing but revenge on his mind. He threatened Akira to die next. In a world where no one ever tried to dodge an attack that would kill them, there existed a hero who would block those attacks for them. That's of course Alan, who came just in time after everyone was defeated, would save her once again. Craig attacked Alan once again, but it did nothing. Alan told Craig that his failure of a son was never a failure after all. When Craig launched his attack, Alan finally understood why his dad was a village idiot. He truly loved Mariel and thought what he was doing was right. Unfortunately, all anime parents must die. Craig summoned the last of his strength, so Alan sent him to hell. After that fight, the king awarded the Westfeldt duchy to Alan, but he refused, intending to live a peaceful life. Everything was supposed to be good since the demons were defeated. Alan's father got smoked, and his brother, Brett, was cut off from the story. But it's just the beginning. Alan planned to travel the world. Lisa told the group that she was granted the title of Duchess of Westfeldt, but left the internal duties to Beatrice so she could join Alan's group. But before anything else, Alan wanted to visit the neighboring empire to the east. In his past life, Alan was a weak hero. Despite this, he challenged dungeons, saved countless lives, and became the ideal hero of the legends. He saved many people from demon invasions in the past, but people didn't want to associate with him. However, he died as a nobody in some level 1 dungeon, which touched an angel's life. The angel's tear saved Alan and granted him another chance at life. It broke his heart that people didn't see him as a hero, but a nuisance, but it was the reason why Henri revived him. Alan woke up from this dream, and it's another fine day because he's got all the huzz in his crib. But the work of a hero never stops. After half a day of doing all his tasks, explained to people why he wanted to travel to the Eastern Empire. It's because he wanted to find a cozy place to live in. Noel wanted to join him in his adventure because the Empire had all sorts of smiths and artisans, which would be good for her as she wanted to learn more blacksmithing techniques. Mylene would also join Noel as both her escort and attendant. However, since Lisa took on the role of the Duchess, she was chained to the duty. But it changed since Beatrice was there to do all the work for her, which allowed Lisa to join the party once again. She told everyone that she needed to join the party to see what was up with the Empire, since they didn't do anything when their kingdom was attacked by demons, which normally an empire would take advantage of. But on the way to the Empire's borders, they were attacked by low-res wolves, and once again, Alan easily defeats all of them. After a few hours, the group arrived at the nearest town. It's packed with civilians of all sorts of races, but Alan noticed that the town was highly guarded for some reason. On the way to the center of the town, they run into Anre, the Marquis's daughter residing in it, and also Alan's friend. Lisa immediately recognized the noblewoman, but there's a problem. Anre warned them to stay away from the Empire because something bad was bound to happen soon. She told the party to leave the Empire's lands before they got caught in it. What's more, the Empire's primary military element, the Black Knights, were also on the move to monitor any suspicious activities. This worried the group because they had just literally arrived a few minutes ago and now they're asked to leave. Alan broke off from the party temporarily because he needed to confirm something. He chased Anre to ask her what's up. He and Anre had a straightforward yet complicated dynamic. Anre was a disciple of the gods, an angel who loved reading about the tales of the heroes. When she noticed Alan's trials and tribulations, she was hooked because she saw how pure-hearted Alan was and she decided to help him out. That's why when Alan died, Anre was the angel who granted him the wish to be reincarnated in the same world. Alan owed his life to Anre, but that's also why he wanted to ask whether Anre was acting as the Marquis's daughter or as the angel that once saved him. Things changed since his reincarnation, so Anre was no longer an angel, but an ordinary daughter of a noble. She followed Alan because she wanted to keep him safe no matter what, but she denied it to him. Once he was done with her, Alan went back to meet the others. But a big explosion shocked everyone in the area. He immediately rushed back to where it happened and stopped a suspicious man running away from the Black Knights. A seal activated behind the man, which caused him to die instantly. The captain of the Black Knights, Lysette, confronted him, but Alan denied every accusation. She mentioned how the man died mysteriously, and it's either caused by demons or Alan's undetectable magic. Lysette was granted the ability of gift detection, but she couldn't detect any from Alan, which made him all the more suspicious. She told him they would have to detain and interrogate him, but Alan mysteriously vanished from their sight, forcing Lysette to close the borders and prevent him from escaping. Thanks to Mylene's powers, Alan escaped the Knights. However, this meant that he was considered a wanted man. Anre and the group met with them in the sewers and scolded him for getting into the trouble when she specifically told him to go home. Anre met with the group and told them what was happening and ordered Mylene to help Alan. But since everything's done and good, he told them that they should go back to the borders. However, Anre explained the situation they got dragged into. They could no longer go back to the borderlands until the travel ban was lifted. They also couldn't use the same trick twice against the Knights, who saw firsthand that it would be used against them. Alan looked at Anre and suggested that they should visit her domain instead since they would be safe there. When they arrived at the domain mansion, Silas, the previous Westfeldt's butler, greeted them. Apparently, Silas and the other left the Duchy of Westfeldt and were welcomed by Anre instead. Anre welcomed the group inside her mansion, where she lived alone. Her parents died a long time ago, and the mansion and fortune were the only things her parents left her. But Alan cut to the chase and asked what happened in the Empire. Anre revealed that the Emperor was assassinated, just like what happened to General Cyril. Apparently, the Emperor was assassinated the same time the general was killed as well. That's why the Black Knights have been nothing but cautious. Later that night, Anre visited Alan. She asked why he was up late at night. Alan didn't answer her and asked her a question. Instead, he thought both assassinations were carried out by demons. Anre agreed with this idea, but it was either the demons or Alan, whose abilities were greater than a demon. Alan knew Anre was watching him the entire time, especially back in his old life. She knows how much people feared and hated Alan, even if he was the hero they needed. It was her wish to grant Alan's wish and make him happy. The next day, Noel asked the group if she could visit the city. After all, the boredom's killing her and she needed to do something about it. Alan thought it would be no problem for Noel to go out since the knights were after him and not her. So, Noel went out with Mylene as her escort. However, people had been giving her weird looks, particularly the elves. This cut their trip short because people started approaching her. Noel thought she was popular because she was cute, but Anri broke her delusion and asked her whether she wanted to know the truth about her heritage. Anri brought the party inside the elven forest, accessible only to those allowed within the place and a select few elves. The elven forest was hidden in another dimension and blocked by multiple magic barriers to prevent anyone from entering without the forest's permission. Apparently, Anri was the one who constructed the barrier. That's why it's undetectable, even with Alan's powers. Anri then led them deeper into the forest. Along the way, Noel felt nostalgic for the past she didn't experience or remember. She thought it was odd because she had no recollection of being there. But they were immediately surrounded by unknown people, who stepped out of the shadow and bowed down to Noel. Anri told the group that Noel was the elven sovereign, their queen. Anri explained that Noel's powers, the ability to enchant weapons and evaluate its power, was a gift that only the royal family had, and Noel was the last descendant of the elven royal family. That's why the elves bowed to her when they recognized who she was. The elven knight Percival greeted Noel and welcomed her into their sanctuary. However, Noel wasn't ready to take on such a big responsibility. All she knew was blacksmithing her entire life. Being a queen wasn't something she's prepared for. However, Percival said they'll continue serving her until she's ready to be their queen. He led the group inside the sanctuary. They saw the elves were learning how to use human tools and entertainment, which was a big step up for them since they'd only ever interacted with themselves. Noel was also greeted by the demon kids who were staying with the elves. Another kid approached them, but the elven kid was angry at the demon kids because they were hogging all the attention. Percival scolded him and ordered him to go away. Later, the elves celebrated the return of their queen. Percival approached Alan and told him that they wouldn't be able to live without Noel since her presence gave them the strength to continue living. Without Noel, they would certainly wither like trees and become extinct because they couldn't bear to have children. Apparently, Anri gave them hope by letting them know about the existence of Noel, and ever since then, they've been waiting for the return of their queen. She was also the reason why they managed to integrate within human society. From this story, Alan surmised that it was Anri who brought the demon children. It piqued his curiosity given that demons were basically a race of feared creatures, but elves don't really mingle with humans, let alone the demons. Percival was surprised by this observation and told him that it was Anri who brought the demon children into their care, stating that the kids were orphans and had nowhere to go. A lot of elves were against this, and even kids like Philip believed the demons were all bad guys because he's a professional racist. But they've been slowly trying to accept that the kids were innocent. Later that day, the group talked about Noel's status and whether she would be their queen or not. Alan told her not to think about it too much because they weren't there to crown her queen all of a sudden. Anri later visited Alan, who told her that they needed to discuss something. She thought they were going to have a wild night, but Alan wasn't wildin' at all. He told her about what he learned about demon kids and Anri was surprised. She then proceeded to tell Alan about the truth of the world. Apparently, demons weren't exactly a race of creatures. Whenever people thought of something evil, the world would recognize this malice, and thus, demons were created. However, demon kids born from their parents weren't exactly the same as the demons recognized by the world. They're basically just children with horns and other demon traits. Anri thought that these kids deserved the world just as much as any other kid. When Alan heard of this, he was touched because it was just like the Anri he knew in the past. The next day, the group visited one of the good spots inside the forest. Then, the demon kids appeared to give Noel a magical stone, but Philip took it and threw it away. He said the demon kids shouldn't try to be cozy with their queen. After all, they're demons. Percival scolded the elf kid, but he ran away. Anri left the group to look for Philip. She found the boy in some alley and told them that he shouldn't have hated the demon kids because they're just kids like him. She then urged Philip to come back to the forest, but before he could do that, a mysterious guy appeared before him and threatened him. Back in the forest, the group celebrated Noel's arrival to their kingdom. Noel was still thinking about her lineage and her apparent duty as a queen. But really, she just wanted to eat good food. After the gathering, Henry bid them farewell because she needed to do something. Percival informed the group that Philip hadn't returned since yesterday and he was worried about him. Henry went back to the city to look for Philip, but she couldn't find him. Meanwhile, Alan and company enjoyed the carefree attitude of the elves. Percival explained that elves don't really need to work or anything since they live very long. They can just do it after 100 years of tomorrow. Also, the food could just appear if they want to. The forest provided anything they needed, so there was no reason for them to work at all. Noel was the odd one, given that she wouldn't stop at anything, especially when it came to forging swords. Alan noticed how elves and the forest had a mutual relationship, so Percival talked about how they would live and die in the forest and return to it. The forest was so peaceful that Alan was considering living there. But before they could think about settlement, some unwanted visitor was detected inside the forest. Percival left them and went to see the visitor, while the rest headed back to the village. When Lisa heard what Alan planned, she confronted him and asked him if he would actually live inside the elven forest. Alan wanted to, given that it's a peaceful location, plus the forest was inhabited by elves. Actually win-win situation. Noel also decided to live in the forest. Back at their mansion, Henry attended to Lysette, who was an unexpected visitor. She asked the captain why she was in their mansion, and the captain asked her if she was hiding Alan, who was their prime suspect from a few days ago. Of course, Henry denied everything related to Alan, but the captain didn't believe her. Apparently, Lysette investigated everything and all points led to Henry's mansion. The knights also appeared and started searching her place, looking for anything they could pin on her. Henry protested and told them it was unfair. But Lysette wanted to be as thorough as possible, even suspecting the elven forest. She knew that Henry often visited the forest and sent in one of their scouts, Oswald. Back in the forest, Percival greeted Oswald. But he immediately saw that Philip was taken captive by the scout. He immediately remembered that the Black Knights were looking for an entrance to the forest. Henry warned them to be vigilant and all, but Oswald still managed to get in. She also said that if one of the knights got inside the forest, they'd be done for, since even she couldn't protest against them. Oswald then started asking about the fugitive that they'd been looking for. It was Alan, but Percival had no idea that it was him, and he was just confused. Oswald was adamant that Alan was inside the forest, forcing Percival to reveal where Alan was. The demon kids went to greet Percival, but were seen by Oswald. Percival tried to send the kids away, but Oswald pushed him aside. Now that he knew that the elves were harboring demons, he had some definitive proof that the elves were hiding something. Oswald immediately attacked the demon kids, which alerted Noel. She told the group that the knights found the forest and they were under attack. Noel and Mylene went after the attacker, but Alan was hesitant. In his past life, even if he sacrificed his body to save people, he wasn't considered a hero. He was feared for absolutely no reason, and people hated him over nothing. This led to depression, and that's why he was hesitant to help. But Lisa brought him back to reality, so he said they needed to help Noel and Percival. Alan rushed toward the site, while Noel confronted Oswald. But she was immediately attacked, so Mylene dragged her to safety. When Percival saw that their queen was in danger, he immediately attacked Oswald, but was easily defeated. Just when Oswald was about to kill him, Alan blocked the attack and saved Percival. Oswald wanted to target Alan, but switched to Noel because of Alan's powers. When Noel was about to get hit by the attack, Alan cut off the spell. When the spell didn't work, Oswald switched to his sword and attacked Alan, which didn't work at all because he was easily defeated. Later, Lisa cured the kids and thanked Alan for saving the kids, even if 2 of them were demon kids. The group couldn't decide what to do with Oswald, so they left the task to Henry, who just arrived after the confrontation. She also told them that the travel ban was lifted and they could go back to the kingdom. And so before the day was over, the group bid the elven forest farewell as they wanted to get on the road as soon as possible. Noel didn't accept the elf queen role for now because she wanted to travel the world, but Percival told him it was alright because at least they had a reason to keep going. The group left after saying goodbyes. Back at Henry's mansion, Lysette formally arrested Henry on the charges of assassinating the emperor, a deal she made to make sure that Alan and the others get back home safely. The next day, Alan's group prepared for the journey home, but Lisa seemed uneasy about going back. Alan noticed this and asked her what's wrong. She mentioned how rushed their departure was and how they didn't even get to say goodbye to Henry, even though she welcomed them into their manor and even led them inside the elven forest. Alan told her that it's okay since it's Henry they were talking to and she wasn't used to people thanking her. He assured Lisa that they would go back anyway, so she could thank her properly. But before they could leave the city, a red-haired boy approached them. The boy asked them to save his older sister. Alan wanted to leave as soon as possible and get away from the Empire, but Noel interjected and asked him to listen to the boy at least. The boy introduced himself as Curtis Linvis, which was the same surname as Henry's. The group went to the tavern to talk about Henry. According to Curtis, Henry was taken by the Black Knights and was charged with assassinating the Emperor. The group immediately aired their grievances because there was simply no way that Henry would do such a thing. Noel wanted to go to the capital and object to whatever trial Henry would be put in. However, Curtis told them it was impossible because Henry was a political prisoner. Many royal members and nobles hated her because of what she was doing wasn't like any noble. Many people envied and resented Henry's presence. Henry was the ideal noble, but because she went against the ideals of many royal members and other nobles, she was ostracized for it. Curtis admits to them that he couldn't do a thing because even though he's a noble himself, he was alone. Henry was also alone herself, and they wouldn't be able to do anything. Alan heard him out and told him that it was a big decision for the party and asked for some time to think things through. Outside the village, Alan thought of things to resolve Curtis's problem. But there was a glaring issue. Lisa talked to Alan about it, but Alan informed them that Henry didn't have any brother or any sibling whatsoever. Noel believed Curtis, but was shocked to hear that Henry had a brother. The group started to doubt Curtis, but Alan told them Henry might have been taken by the Black Knights. They needed to do something about it. Alan found that Henry was on the way to the capital escorted by the Black Knights. Lisa thought it might be a trap, but Alan assured them everything would be fine. On the way to the capital, Lysette interrogated Henry and asked how she was feeling. Henry requested to be treated like a noble, but the captain of the Black Knights told her she couldn't do anything because it was protocol. Lysette also told her that she couldn't do anything because she valued her life and wouldn't want to die so early. Henry asked if Lysette kept her promise, which was to let go of Alan and the group, and the captain confirmed it. However, Henry threatened to kill her if she broke her promise. When the group decided to save Henry, they went to Curtis and rode the carriage towards the capital. An armored knight accompanied them as their escort and chauffeur. On the way to the capital, the atmosphere inside the carriage was tense. The group suspected Curtis to be an imposter and Curtis noticed this. Alan broke the ice and asked Curtis if he was truly Henry's little brother. Curtis finally knew why they were acting weird, so told them the truth. Apparently, he's not actually Henry's little brother, but her cousin. Henry was from the main family line, while Curtis was from a lesser family line. Curtis looked up to Henry because she was the only one who helped him and she was always kind to her. However, Curtis's parents hated Henry because of who she was, the ideal noble. Curtis was forbidden from ever talking to Henry, and that's why he can only watch her from afar. When Henry was taken, that was the only thing he could do for her. He blamed himself for being a coward, but Lisa comforted him and told him he was brave for asking them to save Henry. That night, Henry asked Lysette what happened to the scout they sent, and she told Henry that Oswald was pardoned, so even if Henry sacrificed herself, the attacker still got away. The next day, Alan's group arrived at one of the cities near the capital. The city was heavily guarded, and the group was forced to stop for the time being. Curtis was worried about Henry, but Lisa told him not to worry because they would do anything to save her. Alan thought the town was heavily guarded because of them, so he urged everyone to stay vigilant while they gathered information. He and Lisa went to the Adventurers Guild and checked things out, while Curtis brought Noel and Mylene to their lodgings so they wouldn't stand out. They entered the guild in disguise to avoid attention. After a while, Alan reported to Lisa that he didn't get anything useful, but Lisa got some info. Apparently, the Black Knights were looking for a party of 6 who left the border town a while ago. That party might have been them, so she decided to leave the guild. But one of the Black Knights barged inside and announced a manhunt for the wanted criminals. She offered tons of gold to anyone who could identify and catch the fugitives. The adventurers were hesitant at first, But upon seeing the gold, they immediately told the knights that there were some strangers by the gate a while ago. The adventurers pointed at Alan and Lisa, who already left the room. The knight went outside to look for them and caught sight of them. She chased the two, so Alan carried Lisa and leaped away from the knight, who had to stop to help the kid she injured before they could plan their next move. However, an explosion occurred, which was near the inn where Noel and Mylene were staying. The two immediately rushed to the scene, only to find out that Oswald got both of their friends. He wanted revenge for the humiliation he got from the Elven Forest. Alan faced against Oswald, but he couldn't do anything yet because he's got Mylene and Noel hostage. Curtis was also injured, so Lisa came to his aid. Oswald warned him not to get any closer, or he'd blow the two to Kingdom Come. However, Alan was confident in his skills and challenged Oswald's claims. He threatened Oswald that his head would fly faster than he could blow up anyone. Oswald was unfazed and decided to blow up Mylene, but Alan got to him first and cut off his arm. However, it was a trap. Oswald rigged every victim with his explosive spell. This made Alan really mad because he had flashbacks of his old life and was reluctant to save everybody. He said he had no obligation to save people he didn't know. But when Oswald triggered the spell, Alan moved faster than he could blow up people and saved everybody. This was the first time he was panting, but he locked in and asked whether Oswald had any last words. Alan was about to execute him when their knight escort stopped him. The Vice Captain Celia of the Black Knights asked him to let her and the Black Knights be the judge of Oswald. She swore to uphold her honor as a knight by bringing Oswald to justice. Alan sheathed his sword and allowed her to do her job. That night, Lisa went back to Alan to report that everyone was okay. She also said that the next day they'd be set to visit the capital and save Anri. However, she noticed that Alan had a lot of things going on in his mind. Alan realized that the Black Knights actually held back and didn't even arrest him, even though he was their target. That night, Lysette changed Anri's room into something presentable and provided Anri with the books she needed. When the group scouted the city gates, they saw that security was tight and the knights were arresting anyone found suspicious or didn't have any ID. Lisa thought it'd be good if they dug a hole underground, but Alan said that digging a hole aimlessly might end up in a place where there were guards and they'd be arrested. However, Curtis had an idea. He said that they needed to go underground and use the catacombs underneath the city to bypass the security. That would lead them inside without the guards noticing because there were fewer guards inside. Curtis apologized for the discreet route, but Alan told him it was okay because whatever they did was for Anri's safety. When the night had fallen, the group went to the entrance to the catacombs. Alan took point and led the group inside. However, not even a few meters away from the entrance, they were immediately met by patrols. Since they had no place to escape, Mylene used her invisibility to hide the group from the guards. Even the catacombs were guarded, so they tread carefully. The place was quiet after the initial patrol and they thought they were safe, but no. Lysette appeared and it looked like she was expecting them. She immediately attacked, but Alan left the invisibility and caught the arrow. Apparently, she could see through the invisibility due to her gift. Lysette told them the ladies could go, except for Alan. Once the rest were gone, Lysette challenged Alan to a duel and immediately took the initiative. She proved to be a challenge since she was faster than anything Alan fought so far. Meanwhile, Lisa rendezvoused with Curtis and told him that they were attacked. Curtis looked worried, but Alan was left behind fighting Lysette. Alan commended the captain for being fast, but was curious why he was still alive. The captain had many chances to kill him, but she was probably holding back. Lysette was annoyed by this, so she went for the kill. But she remembered how Anri threatened to kill her, so she immediately backed off. However, the catacombs started collapsing on them. Curtis and the rest saw the smoke coming from where Alan was, but miraculously, he was still alive. The group was worried that he died, but he's got the plot armor. Curtis didn't realize that Alan survived that, and Alan noticed it. Curtis snapped back to reality and told Alan that he didn't have a plan to save Anri yet. But they'd have to rest for the time being so they could plan their next move tomorrow. That same night, Alan left the group for a bit and visited Anri. She was surprised to see him, but asked him if he had any plans to get her out and told him they wouldn't be able to execute her on false charges. However, Alan reassured her that she would be hanged at the very least. but he admitted that he was worried about her, which made Anri blush. But Anri had to just do a self-sacrificial act, even though it's not needed. She told Alan to go away because she didn't need his help. So he did. The next day, Curtis broke the news to them that Anri was suspected of colluding with Alan's kingdom in a plot against the Empire. Alan didn't seem surprised, but Curtis warned them that they needed to do everything they could to save Anri and prevent the two countries from going into war. Alan asked Curtis if the best way was to leave the Empire quietly without doing anything to save Anri. Curtis confirmed that it was the only way, but he'd do what could to save her. Lisa and the rest of the girls didn't like that and argued against it, but Curtis seemed very affected that he couldn't do anything either. Convinced of Curtis's resolve, Alan told them to accompany him. That night, Anri was moved to another cell, which was expected. But what she didn't expect was the visit of her cousin, Curtis. Curtis appeared out of nowhere and shocked Anri, not because of the visit, but what he brought to the table. Curtis was once an incompetent cousin of hers, but now he's different. He's got the authority power of the Imperial family, the power to command the Black Knights. Anri realized that he probably killed the Imperial family, but Curtis confessed he didn't and instead threatened the family, who fled the country. Anri's curious about what Curtis's end goal was, but her cousin asked for her help. Curtis wanted to become the new emperor, and with Anri's help, it could become a reality. Curtis's mom was a peasant, and the only way to get noticed was to marry someone from the main family. Basically, that would be Anri's role. Curtis went full Sweet Home Alabama on Anri, but Anri was disappointed and disgusted by him. She didn't think that Curtis would have such a lame dream because she used to admire him, but now he went too low. She also rejected his offer to rule the kingdom together, stating that she didn't want to be that low. Curtis tried to ask her one more time, but to no avail. But since Anri turned her back on him, he left her to think this through. Curtis was confident he could coerce Anri into joining her, especially since Alan and the rest of the group were no longer a threat. On the way to the border, Noel told how suffocating the atmosphere was. She couldn't believe they just left Anri to her own devices and Curtis. She said she wouldn't complain if Alan wanted to go back to the kingdom, but leaving Anri was just a doo-doo decision. But Alan argued Anri looked like she didn't need her help. After all, that's just Anri and she's used to it. Lysette visited Anri and gave her another book, The Tales of Heroes. In her past life, Anri was an angel and a servant of the gods. She was the odd one in the court of angels and was told that she was weird. But Anri loved the tales of human heroes who sought nothing but the good of the realm. Anri always loved both the living and the legendary heroes, but there was also an odd hero. This hero was a failure, but was the ideal hero. However, this hero died in some unknown dungeon, such as it was the hero's fate. However, she couldn't stand that the ideal hero would just die in some dungeon. She watched over the hero's journey and guided him all the way through. But the fate was the same. Alan still died in the end. It was this fate that made Anri settle with being captured. Later, Curtis visited her in her cell, still offering the same thing. Anri kept refusing, but Curtis told her she shouldn't because her life was at stake. Anri took charge of the conversation and told Curtis to bring the noose instead of yapping. Curtis told her that he'd send an assassin to kill Ellen, but she's confident the assassin would just get stomped on. Curtis kept on making baseless threats. However, Anri kept pissing him off, so he had no choice but to hit her. When he realized what he had done, he ran off. Things didn't go according to plan now, and he started questioning himself. The room was suddenly filled with a dark aura, enveloping him. Back at the party, Alan was ready to leave, but Lisa stopped and told him that they couldn't just leave without doing anything to help Anri. Lisa insisted on helping Anri even if she didn't want any. Back at the capital, Curtis visited Anri again, but this time he tried to assault her. Anri moved away from him, which angered his cousin, and tried to kill her with his new powers. But Alan arrived just in time and destroyed Curtis's spell. Celia also appeared, and together, they challenged Curtis. Curtis got his dark power just a few minutes ago from a mysterious man, who brought the head of the Emperor. The man told Curtis that if he needed his power, he needed to kill him. So Curtis frantically stabbed the man multiple times. The man transformed into a dark power and enveloped Curtis. Now the power had overtaken his body, but Alan knew the power wasn't Curtis's. But it was no longer Curtis they were talking to. The madmen started attacking both Celia and Alan. Henry tried to stop his cousin, but to no avail. Curtis then attacked Celia, but Alan completely defeated him easily. Alan asked him why he tried to be extremely stupid by planning a coup. He didn't understand why Curtis tried to attack him, even though he was basically not related to the Empire whatsoever. Curtis told him it was because he was in the way of his love for Henry. When Curtis realized that he's become stupid, he short-circuited and didn't know what to do. Seeing how low his cousin had fallen, Henry couldn't help but console him. But it was a trap and Curtis tried to strangle her. Alan told him to stop or it would be too late, but it was already too late. Curtis immediately attacked both Celia and Alan, and couldn't move. So Lysette barged in and cut the spells off. This angered Curtis so much that he got consumed by the power completely and transformed into something else. But Alan just finished him. Curtis didn't even get the chance to fight. Through the attack, Alan realized how much Curtis liked Henry and finally understood why he was acting that way. Curtis asked him one last time why he didn't conquer and rule the world, especially if he got that kind of power. Alan told him it's not important because he's already got the world with his friends. He added that he wanted to live as peaceful as possible. Henry went to him and thanked him for everything, but she immediately scolded him for coming back despite her sending them away. And so Alan saved both the Empire and the kingdom. The story ended with how Alan and Henry found their place in the world. This was the story of how the weakest hero became the savior of the world.